Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. So if you're looking at your Class 10 social studies book right now, that chapter on population probably looks like, well, a giant wall of boring statistics, right? But we're going to completely flip how you look at that today. Because this isn't really just about numbers, it's actually a super dynamic, constantly changing story about us. It's the story of who we are, where we live, how we work, and ultimately where our country is heading. So, whether you're prepping for your exams or you just want to really understand the fabric of our nation, we're going to make these concepts crystal clear and totally unforgettable. Let's dive right in.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover Introduction to the Census, Decoding India's Age Structure, Sex Ratio and Equality, Literacy and the Working Population, the Dynamics of Population Change, and finally, Migration and Population Density.
All right, let's start with Section 1, Introduction to the Census.
So we're kicking things off with the absolute foundation of all demographic data. Because honestly, you just can't understand a country without counting its people. And you certainly can't plan for development without knowing exactly who needs what. The census is basically the systematic procedure for acquiring and recording information about every single person in the country. Our very first attempt at a census in India was way back in 1872, but the first truly systematic one happened in 1881, and from then on, it became this massive operation conducted every 10 years. Now, you might be wondering why your textbooks rely so heavily on 2011 data. Well, that's simply because the scheduled 2021 census had to be skipped due to the severe complications and lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic.
According to that 2011 census, our population size was absolutely staggering. We hit 121 crores. That's 1.21 billion people. And when the surveyors actually broke that massive number down, they found roughly 62 crore men and 59 crore women. Definitely keep those numbers in the back of your mind because that slight difference between men and women is going to be incredibly important when we talk about social equality in just a couple of minutes.
Moving on to Section 2, Decoding India's Age Structure. So we have 121 core people, but obviously they're not all doing the exact same thing. To really grasp the economy, we have to slice that massive population pie by age. Breaking down our demographic segments like this shows exactly who is responsible for bringing income into the household, and by extension, the whole nation. First, we have children, from 0 to 15 years old. Their dependents, focusing on education and, being taken care of by their families. Then we hit the working age, which is 15 to 59 years old. These are the earners. They're the absolute engine of the country's GDP. Think of your parents going out and working hard every single day. And finally, the aged, 60 years and above. Now, while many folks in the organized sector get to retire and collect pensions, it's a pretty harsh reality that many elvers who spent their lives in the unorganized sector have to continue doing physical labor just to survive. Next up, Section 3, Sex Ratio and Equality. Demographic data isn't just about counting heads. It actually reveals some pretty deep societal truths. If you're taking notes for your exams right now, literally memorize this definition. The sex ratio is the number of females per 1,000 males in the population. We care so much about this specific metric because it's a very powerful direct indicator of social and gender equality. It tells us point blank how equitably a society treats men and women when it comes to fundamental human rights like healthcare, nutrition, and opportunities right from birth. And just look at the stark contrasts across different regions. Back in 2011, Haryana had only 870 females for every 1,000 males. Telangana was a lot closer to balance at 988. But then look at Kerala, 1,040 females per 1,000 males. We threw the USA in there at 1050 just to give you some international context. So what does this actually tell us? Well, regions with higher literacy, better education, and strong social awareness, like Kerala, naturally see higher female survival rates. Why? Because daughters are valued and cared for just as equally as sons. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is understanding the difference between a positive and a negative sex ratio. A positive ratio is anything greater than 1,000, meaning females equal or actually outnumber males. A negative ratio, which falls below 1,000, often points to some pretty tragic societal realities. It reflects a systemic neglect of female health and nutrition, and in the absolute worst cases, things like female feticide, where girls are tragically denied the right to even be born.
All right, let's look at Section 4, Literacy and Working Population. Education and employment, basically the twin engines of any growing economy. Let's analyze the numbers and see how well our engines are actually running. 74%.
That was India's literacy rate in 2011. And for your exams, remember the official census definition of a literate person. It's anyone aged 7 and above who can read and write with understanding in any language. Now, while 74% might seem like, sure, there's definitely room for improvement, we really have to recognize that this is a massive, historic leap from a mere 12% literacy rate back when we gained independence in 1947.
Now, where does our literate and working population actually go to earn a living? Well, we see a massive economic imbalance in India here. A tiny 8% of the workforce is in the organized sector, meaning they get formal contracts, paid leave, and pensions, the whole shebang. Meanwhile, a staggering 92% of the workforce is trapped in the unorganized sector. They lack formal benefits, job security, and safe working conditions. Yet make no mistake, they are the absolute backbone of our daily lives. To break that workforce down even further, the census groups laborers into 4 main categories. 25% are cultivators, meaning farmers who actually own the land they work. 30% are agricultural laborers. These folks don't own land but work for daily wages on other people's farms. 4% work in household industries, doing things like weaving or basket making right from home. And the remaining 41% fall under other workers. That's a huge catch-all category that includes everything from factory labor to IT professionals and traders. Moving to Section 5, Dynamics of Population Change. Now, these numbers aren't just, static facts frozen on a page. The population is constantly shifting due to the forces of life, death, and human movement. In fact, here's a famous question that pops up in exams all the time. If population generally grows, why did India's population actually decrease in the 1921 census? It's even known as the year of the Great Divide. Well, the answer lies in some severe historical tragedies. During that decade, the country was hit by brutal famines and the devastating 1918 influenza epidemic, which tragically wiped out roughly 1.5 crore people. So to calculate exactly how much a population changes, we use a pretty simple formula. You add the births and the in-migration, which is people arriving. Then you subtract the deaths and the out-migration, which is people leaving. Let's make this super memorable using some favorite movies, okay? Think of a birth in the desert village in the movie Kaleja. Boom, that adds to the count. Now think of Srimanthadu, where a severe drought forces villagers into out-migration. That subtracts from the population. And then there's Chhatrapati, where Vizag port sees this rapid in-migration as displaced people arrive. That right there is demographic change in action. And finally, Section 6, Migration and Population Density. Let's explore how all this movement actually reshapes our physical landscape. Where are all these people going, and how crowded does it really get? So migration is just the movement of people across regions, and it generally comes in 2 flavors. Internal migration is moving within the same country, like laborers moving from Odisha to North India for construction jobs, or maybe tech workers heading over to Bangalore. International migration, on the other hand, is crossing borders entirely, like moving from India to the USA or the Arab nations for higher education or better paying jobs. Whether they're escaping natural disasters or just seeking prosperity, this movement drastically shifts where our population ends up concentrating. Which brings us right to population density. That bold number, 382, is India's average population density as of 2011. What does that actually mean for us? It means if you take the entire landmass of India, on average, there are 382 people living in every single square kilometer. But of course, as we all know, people aren't exactly spread out evenly, are they? Because at the end of the day, geography really dictates human settlement. Just look at Bihar, a staggering 1,102 people per square kilometer. Why? Because it sits on highly fertile plains with excellent river systems, which makes it absolutely perfect for agriculture and sustaining massive communities. Now compare that to Arunachal Pradesh, with just 17 people per square kilometer. Its rugged mountainous terrain, super dense forests, and harsh weather conditions make it incredibly difficult to establish large settlements. So yeah, geography is basically destiny when it comes to density. We've covered a ton of ground today, from the census and age structures to the critical importance of the sex ratio, workforce dynamics, and how birth, death, and migration actively shape our density. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. You guys are part of the working age demographic of tomorrow. So as education rises, as technology advances, and as migration accelerates, how will your generation reshape India's demographic destiny? Thank you so much for hanging out and using this explainer for your revision. Keep this structured breakdown in mind, review these concepts, and you are absolutely going to ace those Class 10 exams. Keep learning and stay curious.